Welcome to the One Take podcast, where we talk about movies, TV shows, video games, other stuff every week. I'm Gil, here with Alun.
Hey.
And my other brother, Adam.
Yo.
And this week, what are we talking about? We figured that 90+% of our audience over here on the podcast channel are Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad fans. So as we transition into the non-Better Call Saul content, I wanted to start with a sort of tie-in. Much to Alun's chagrin, because we should be on the One Take podcast channel. We let our hair down. We talk about anything we want to talk about, and it just so happened that the thing I wanted to talk about this week is also related to Better Call Saul.
What a coincidence!
So we're talking about Vince Gilligan, the creator of Breaking Bad, his first movie ever, Wilder Napalm. Apparently, he wrote a movie called Home Fries back when he was at NYU Film School. He submitted that script to a competition, and he kind of gained the attention of one of the judges there named Mark Johnson, and he said, "You got any other scripts?" And he did, Wilder Napalm. And that judge, Mark Johnson, has gone on to become his mentor, his producer, was a producer on Breaking Bad, a producer on Better Call Saul. So we wanted to go back. What was an early 20s Vince Gilligan like? How did his writing back then compare to Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul? And I tried to find any interviews with Vince Gilligan where he talked about this movie. I literally only found one. And everything I just said to you guys, I learned from that interview. I also found an interview with the director of the movie, Glenn Gordon Caron, who is best known for creating the 80s series Moonlighting, which launched Bruce Willis's career. He also directed Clean and Sober with Michael Keaton, which was the first dramatic role he did back in 1988, 1 year before Batman. So I wanted to mention the director because there is something interesting about this movie where it's definitely Vince Gilligan's vision. He, of course, wrote the screenplay, but tonally the movie's very weird. Mm-hmm. And I think part of it is because there was some clash, not like a conflict, but this is what the director himself said. I read Wilder Napalm a number of times, and I turned it down a number of times. I just felt it was I wasn't sure. I understood it as thoroughly as I should, and it was so heavily Vince's vision. So the director of the movie, the person overseeing every step of the creation of the movie, basically didn't really get the movie.
That's good.
By the way, I think we should just say that you don't need to have... We're not expecting that anyone listening to this or watching this has seen the movie. We're going to go kind of scene by scene and talk about it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I said this on Saulcast, but the movie has a 25% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I'm not saying that the critics are always right. Sometimes they are. So this movie, it's fun to watch, especially if you're going to watch it as a sort of intellectual exercise, or if you're going to watch it with someone sitting next to you and sort of commentate on the entire movie. And even if you don't watch the movie, watching this podcast or listening to it will sort of simulate the experience of sitting on the couch with the three of us and watching it. Because I'll walk through everything and we'll give all of our thoughts.
Spoilers ahead.
Yes, we will be spoiling Wilder Napalm from 1993.
But that's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep watching.
It's got a 25%.
The one other thing I wanted to mention that the director said in his interview is we've brought this up so many times, but when we talk about Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, one of the ways that we compliment the show is that they do a great job of avoiding exposition. Characters never say things for the audience's sake. They only say things that people would actually say. And the go-to example from Vince Gilligan is Jimmy and Chuck in the first episode of Better Call Saul. They're brothers. How do you establish that on screen? Any other show would have Jimmy say to Chuck, how long have we been brothers? We've been brothers for how long? So Vince Gilligan generally avoids that. This movie, there are many instances where somebody will say, so you haven't talked to your brother in what, 5 years?
Yeah.
You remember what happened 5 years ago, don't you? And one of the things the director said in the interview, and I'll just quote him here, he was basically talking about how Vince Gilligan's script was lacking in certain ways, and the director felt like he needed to teach Vince Gilligan. So, for example, okay, this is what he said to Vince. With movies, particularly American movies, a certain amount of explicitness is necessary. So I think a lot of those lines might have come from Glenn Gordon.
Also, let's just, we need a little hook here. Let's just give like the basic premise of the movie is that there's two brothers who are capable of, would you call it like pyrokinesis?
Right.
And they're struggling with, as they go through adulthood, keeping it a secret versus going public with it and struggling with their own identities. And it's a very interesting and kind of silly movie.
And I would say if you're a fan of Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, I do think there are a lot of themes in this movie that feel similar to some of the themes that Vince Gilligan has dealt with in his more recent work.
Not just themes, but actual specific elements.
Yeah.
Regarding the explicitness of the 5 years ago line, I almost feel like they were aware of it, and in one scene, it felt like they were doing it on purpose as a joke. Because there's one part where I think they said it 3 times in like a minute.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, and the movie is often referred to, and Adam, you called it a little silly. The movie is often referred to as a comedy. And I don't know, Alon, would you call it a comedy?
I mean,
kind of.
It was an attempt.
It definitely has a lot of humor in it, but there's also some drama. And I feel like part of the reason it gets labeled as a comedy is because of this weird clash between the writer and the director, where if you look at the script and you're not really sure what to do with it, and it does feel a little silly, you kind of just lean into that aspect of it. There are some scenes where you feel like you're watching Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say there were scenes that felt like I was watching a cartoon.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it a comedy, but I would say it was comedic.
Yes, I'll agree with that.
The same way I would say Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, especially Better Call Saul, they have really funny moments, but you wouldn't actually call them comedies, even though they're funnier than a lot of comedies.
Yeah, I would. That's a great comparison. I would say this movie is a comedy as much as Breaking Bad was a comedy. And just one more thing before we actually dive into the movie, but just looking at Vince Gilligan's early days, I wanted to find, what was his big break? And it's no surprise that it was The X-Files. But specifically, the first story he pitched, and I think actually wrote for the show, was a story about a guy whose shadow comes to life.
I know where this is going.
That happened to me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When I was a child, my shadow did come to life and haunted me. Now, in retrospect, I think it was a nightmare. But for years, I just remembered that as a memory. And I won't go into it here, but that's a little hook for you to stick around. Because one day, I'll tell that story on the podcast. Okay, are we ready to dive into this movie?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we start off at a carnival. And I love carnival environments in movies, just in general.
Me too.
So that got me excited. We see a clown named Biff and his 2 assistants, Rex and Snake Lady. And just like in Better Call Saul, where Camera Guy is credited as Camera Guy and doesn't have a name, Snake Lady, that's how she's credited. And don't worry, the connections between this movie and Better Call Saul do get a little bit more substantial than that. Yeah. We quickly see that Biff has the ability to point his finger and light things on fire. And he wants to be on The Tonight Show with David Letterman. He wants to go public and become famous for this ability as Dr. Napalm. And to help in that, his assistant Rex has traded the Tilt-A-Whirl and the Flying Bobs at the carnival, which he doesn't even own. So he has no authorization to give these rides away.
Yeah, but he's a carny. What do you expect?
Exactly. He gives them away to acquire the Dr. Napalm suit, sort of a rubber suit befitting a superhero, and a fire protection suit for his assistants so they don't get lit on fire or anything.
Along with a cod piece that kind of amplifies his manhood.
Yeah, when he shows the suit, he goes, and it's got a built-in wad for the ladies.
Back in like if you look at like Renaissance paintings and stuff of like royalty, That was literally a fashion piece. Like you would wear something there.
Like what they call it, a cod piece,
Cod
right?
piece, yeah. I think that. I wonder if that's gonna make a comeback.
Was that for protection? Like you would wear during a sport?
No, I don't think so. It was meant. It was like a formal wear.
An aesthetic choice.
Yeah,
Like in A Clockwork Orange.
Yes, just like that.
Yeah.
A kid shoots a pretend gun at Biff, the clown, and he jokingly threatens to shoot the kid. And you can tell that he's not necessarily a great guy because Snake Lady begs him, "Don't do it, Biff." So she clearly must think that he was at least considering lighting that kid on fire, right?
Yeah.
Did Rex look familiar to either of you? Jim Varney?
Rex was one of the not. He was the carny who was helping, like who sold the.
I recognize
stuff,
his
right?
voice.
Yeah, he was the carny that was helping.
No, I didn't recognize him.
Alon, you of the two of you, you're the one who was more likely to recognize him. But Ernest Scared Stupid.
That's him?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
What is that?
There was a whole series of movies starred with a character named Ernest. So it'd be like
Well, I've heard of
Ernest-
like Ernest Goes to Blank and Ernest does
Yeah.
this, but I've never known what that is. I would always see it in like the TV Guide channel where it's just every 10 seconds the thing moves and you can see what's on.
Right.
I always
had a
see
lot
that,
of VHS tapes.
Have no idea what it was.
Yeah, so it was a lot of movies like Ernest Goes to Jail, Ernest Goes to School, Ernest Scared Stupid. That's the one that you and I saw a bunch of times as kids. He's basically a dopey, almost a Jim Carrey-esque character. Always gets himself into trouble. So it was all these really just dumb comedy movies. But I remember that specific one was kind of a horror comedy, Scared Stupid, and we saw it a million times as kids.
Everything. Your shoes untied. To save the day.
It's showtime.
Yeah. It's Ernest P. Worrell in a brand new movie.
But that's him, Jim Varney. And Dennis Quaid. So he plays Biff. And we know him mostly probably from Frequency.
Yeah.
And just in general, he always plays pretty straight-laced characters. Like you would picture him as a cop or something. So seeing him as a clown, like really hamming it up.
Yeah. He's got a pretty good Joker smile, actually.
He has a great Joker smile, though anytime he talks as the clown and does the whole, "How's everybody doing today?" like that voice, never quite worked for me.
Oh, really? I was actually about to say, I thought he was pretty good in terms of doing the physical clown movements and walking around with the huge clown shoes and everything. It actually clicked for me.
Me too, I'll be honest.
I
But
thought
also,
the movements-
I'm not too. I know it's Dennis Quaid, but I haven't seen that many movies with him, so I didn't have like a preconception about what he's supposed to be like.
Why, we're just one big old thermonuclear family, Wilder. Well, you too, Wilder. Photo booth jockey. Very impressive.
So that might have been part of it for me. But I will say the movements I thought were great. Just when he was talking. And he didn't do a lot of it. But when he did the clown voice, like he kept saying, "Mon frere." It just felt really awkward to me. But the movements
Which you know
were
what
great.
Mon frere means.
Yes, but you should explain it for the folks at home.
It means brother in French.
Okay. I knew it was like a term of endearment. But
I just learned that because I was in France.
Huh.
oh, that's right.
Where
yeah.
Mon
And
Frere?
I said "au contraire, mon frère," and then I had to turn to someone and say, "Wait, what does that actually mean?"
And they're like, "Well, Adam, if you've ever seen Wilder Napalm, you would know." Then we cut to the opening credits, and there's this cool effect where it'll show the names of the actors, and then certain letters will burn and melt away, and then the remaining letters will be used to spell the next person's name. The problem
that was
is,
cool.
it doesn't always work though. So sometimes it'll just fade to the next thing.
But that's kind of similar to in Breaking Bad. They would always do that for the
chemical
opening credits.
symbols.
They would use chemical elements and fit them into people's names somehow.
That's true. There's another connection number 2 already.
Yeah.
If we
so
had
many
our bell,
seeds
we'd
were
ring it.
planted. So many very
Exactly.
superficial ones.
Yeah. All right, then we meet the main character of this movie, coincidentally named Walter White. He
I was gonna make the same joke. I was gonna say he's a high school teacher who finds out he has lung cancer.
So not Walter.
Wilder White.
That's okay. There you go. His name is Wilder. His last name is not White, but he does work in a small drive-through photo kiosk in the middle of a dying shopping center. You see half the stores say for lease, everything for sale. He's sitting in there reading Firehouse magazine. Now, I will say, though, you see a serious-looking guy sitting in a small booth in a parking lot reading a magazine. Who do you think of?
Mike.
Good old Mike.
Yeah, that's right. Michael Ehrmantraut at the start of Better Call Saul. And these photo kiosks, by the way, they were big in the 80s. There'd be a little kiosk in the middle of a parking lot. Back in the day when you had to develop film, you could drive through, drop off the film, the next day pick up developed photos.
And then your heart starts racing and your pupils dilate and you have no idea why.
That's right. So he's got a humdrum 9-to-5 job. He's sitting in his booth, counts down the clock to 5 o'clock, and then
there's literally not a single car in the parking lot.
Yeah, I don't think we see a single customer.
No, there is not a single customer. Which I liked that because it gave the movie kind of this surreal feeling to it.
And it does fit the aesthetic of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, where it's always in these small towns. Here we're in Virginia with these big, in this case it's not desert, but just big empty landscapes.
This like bleak, desolate setting.
Yeah.
Like it kind of felt like I don't know, almost like these novels I would read. And in fact, they even reference it. At one point, one of the answers to a crossword puzzle is a Kierkegaard, who is like an existentialist philosopher. And like those people were writing novels that had these kind of bleak, desolate feelings with kind of humans trying to do things and to accomplish things in the setting of just meaninglessness. And that's kind of the feeling you get when you're just sitting there.
Yeah, 100%. But he's actually he seems to be a pretty positive guy because after work, very playful music playing. He's amusing himself by balancing on the railroad tracks, a little railing.
He's picking up like posies or
that's
some
right.
kind of, he's collecting flowers.
And this is where I said the movie sometimes feels like Looney Tunes because it has this really playful orchestral music. Sometimes it'll be synchronized with the characters' movements. And you'll leave it, especially when you get into some slapstick fire battles later on. But he returns home, and you see this sign that says "Paper Boy." Throw paper beyond this sign. And of course, the paper is right in front of it. So he picks up the sign and moves it in front of the paper. Picking up a sign out of the ground and moving it.
Yeah.
What does that remind you of?
Good old Jimmy.
Jimmy McGill. And I'll say at this point, so we did say a few times already, it's not a great movie. But I was actually at least intrigued and on board for about half of it. And already we've named a few interesting things. You're in this desolate landscape. You've got a clown that can start fires with his mind. Even that sign. Like, why does the paper have to get thrown beyond that point? Yeah. It's a pretty interesting stuff.
So that was a good show, don't tell situation. And in a second, people are going to understand why as we describe more why that sign existed. But I just want to throw this out there. I actually thought the movie was kind of good. Mm-hmm. There really isn't that much I would change about it. I just don't I do kind of think it deserves that 25% on Rotten Tomatoes because what 25% means is 25% of people who watch it, 25% of critics who watched it liked it.
Yeah.
It's not the same as giving it a grade. And so I do think it's a movie that's probably not for most people, but I think if you like Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, it's good to watch. Like I enjoyed watching it and it did make me think a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, we were entertained. I don't regret watching it.
Yeah. Well, I would say, so I do think it kind of falls apart in the last 30 to 40 minutes. Yeah. But I do, up until that point, I would say this is a pretty good movie. It's a little rough around the edges, but it's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I think we talked about it, and both of us felt it started around a 70-something and then plummeted in the second half.
Yeah, I'll agree to that. And I'll signal Adam the point where I'll say this is where Alon and I kind of disconnected with the movie, and you're going to be like, that's where I really started to like it. So why does the paper have to get thrown beyond that point? We find out that his wife can't really go outside too far because she has this allergy to electricity. No, that's another joke. No, we see his wife Vita on the roof, and she has an ankle monitor on. So clearly she's under house arrest, which again, that's another that's interesting. That just kind of gets you to sit up in your seat and wonder what's happening. We also see that she's reading Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time, so we learn maybe she's a pretty smart person. She also loves green painted toenails.
Like highlighter green, yeah.
Yeah, very bright green. There's a green light above the front door. Now
she paints her cigarettes. She draws on them to make them green.
Yeah, she has like a green highlighter she uses to make all of her cigarettes green. Now we know that Vince Gilligan loves symbolism. And in Breaking Bad, colors played a big role. Characters would wear certain colored clothing.
Walter White, Gretchen Schwartz, which means black. No, that means black in German.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. I knew that.
Yeah.
So Vita means life. Green as a color usually represents life. And I also wrote here, Marie from Breaking Bad likes purple. And she wears a lot of what she wore was purple. So he likes female characters with a certain color preference. There's another connection there.
She's also, on the note of like the book she's reading, Brief History of Time?
Mm-hmm. That's right, yeah.
Yeah, which I've read, by the way, just for the record.
Nice.
Yeah. Is it good? Yeah, it was good. But she's also like interested in like classical music. Like one of the things she's talking about that she wants to do when she's finally free is go see like a chamber performance. Mm-hmm. Again, she knew the name of that philosopher for the crossword puzzle.
And she plays the cello.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, she plays the cello.
Yeah, it doesn't really play a big role in the movie, but you see a cello, you see a metronome on the table, and there's one scene where it kind of just cuts to her playing the cello. Mm-hmm. We see a calendar counting down the days of Vita's house arrest, counting down to D-Day.
Yep.
Yeah.
What does that remind you of? That's the day she's freed. So she's a few days away at this point. Now, as soon as Wilder walks into the house, she kind of attacks him. They start making out. She wants to make it on the roof. You know what that means?
No.
We're going to keep things PG-13 here today. He refuses.
Yeah, throughout the movie, she's basically in heat.
Yes.
For the whole movie.
As she puts it, she's raring to go.
Yeah.
Okay, he doesn't want to do it on the roof. And she says, what about the table? And he says, well, it's not big enough. And so she says, well, maybe we can go get the leaf, which is the thing you put in the middle of the table to extend it. Mm-hmm. So she's in his arms, and they're discussing, like, where did we put the leaf? Maybe I'll go grab it. And he says, can't we just do it on the bed like normal people? And then she takes his hair off, and we see that he's got fake hair, toupee. And underneath, he's bald and kind of burn scarred. Mm-hmm. So a few minutes in, just a lot of interesting questions the movie raises.
You know, it's also interesting to see this kind of stuff because this is by far the most like romance and like couple kind of interaction we've seen from Vince Gilligan, because Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, they obviously have those elements, and a lot of things in the plot are driven by romance, but it's not shown to this extent.
Yeah, agreed. And now this is another connection. This is not like a jokey, superficial connection, but I actually think it's a theme that Vince Gilligan is interested in, and it comes back in Better Call Saul. So to me, this situation is almost like if Chuck were married to Kim. Does that resonate at all? Because she wants to,
I see that.
Yeah, he's kind of very humdrum, whereas she wants to do it on the roof, on the anywhere but the bed.
Well, and then we can establish also, we're going to get to it eventually, but the main character who is married to this woman, who's more serious, his brother, the clown, who has the same fire power, is much more outgoing about it and wants to show the public what he can do, and he's basically a lot more of a reckless person, so you can kind of compare him to Jimmy.
Yeah,
and I think you're right that like one theme Vince Gilligan is interested in, both in Better Call Saul and this movie, is the idea of temptation and the idea of doing things that you wouldn't otherwise do out of desire for another person, which I think is something you see most prominently between Jimmy and Kim in more recent episodes.
And I think the Jimmy Chuck comparison is actually the relationship in this movie is very similar. And specifically, one thing we'll come back to a few times is that I feel like Chuck, he always did the right thing on paper, but emotionally was doing the wrong things and basically turning all of his loved ones against him. And I think Wilder essentially does the same thing, as we'll see. So the next morning, the alarm goes off, and Wilder and Vida fall from the top sheet of the bed. I guess that was sort of his way of being a little wild.
I don't know how they even physically stayed up there. Like, I mean, they ripped through it in the morning. You would figure they would have ripped through it during their activities the previous night.
Right, and somehow the alarm going off triggers that sheet ripping.
Well, like that's what makes it. Those are the kinds of things that made this cartoony.
Yeah. Well, no, I assume the alarm made them wake up and then move a certain way. I don't think the alarm triggered the ripping.
Well,
sheet.
but to your point though, if they were canoodling,
agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Vida makes him a plate of a couple of eggs and a slice of bacon in the shape of a smiley face.
Just like Adam.
Go ahead.
Skylar with the veggie bacon or turkey bacon.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't a smiley face, but she did.
Age.
Yeah, for Walt's birthday.
Yeah. And then Walt, on his 52nd birthday, a year later, uses the bacon to make a 5 and a 2, which I think, not coincidentally, look like a nuclear bomb exploding.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That's cool.
That's right. Somebody does not listen to Saulcast.
You probably talked about that a while ago.
Vida tries to kiss him, and Wilder says, "Vida, I have to go to work." So he's too busy to be kissed. And
Married
then, like,
to the job.
Exactly. And then Adam, like you mentioned,
which is funny because nothing happens at his job at all.
Yeah, I know.
He's so concerned about like going on time, leaving on time. He doesn't get a single customer. Nobody's watching him.
I mean, he's sort of like it's sort of likable. It makes him kind of likable how dedicated he is to his work and kind of following the rules, especially because he has this insane power that he's just not using.
But Vida offhand tells him the answer to a crossword he's working on. Adam, I'll let you say the name because I think
Kierkegaard.
Kierkegaard, 17 across.
Thanks.
Kierkegaard, 17 across. So like you said, a Danish theologian, philosopher, poet, social critic, religious author, and not only was he an existentialist philosopher, but was widely considered the first existential philosopher.
Yeah.
So it was all his fault. She tells him that she had a dream last night where Wilder was Elvis, but refused to sing. And she goes, "You think that means anything?" So like you said, Adam, he has the same ability as his brother. He can also start fires with his mind. She wants him to use the fire because he could be famous and make a bunch of money. You could be Gruppenführer, she says. Now, when you hear Führer, your mind only goes one place, right?
Yeah.
But Gruppenführer apparently was a rank in the Nazi Party, but has gone on to also mean just the leader of a group or team, in the police, fire department, or other organizations.
She's trying to convince him to use his powers, to like just do something with them, and he's like, "It's just a parlor trick. Like, you can do something nobody else on earth can do except for your brother. Like, come up with a way to make money with that."
He can essentially provide free energy. He could solve the energy problem in the world.
Well, they didn't get into the science of it. We don't know how much he can produce. Maybe there's a limit.
Maybe he uses up calories in his body.
Mana.
Yeah, he has a certain amount of mana.
Yeah, he runs out of mana.
Well, I mean, I'm sure we'll get more into it, but the rules of how the fire works, they don't really explain it very well.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess I was wondering, would it actually make you rich and famous?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It can.
I know. I was just testing you guys. Of course it would. You could be Gruppenführer.
Yeah.
She kind of cajoles him into, she puts a cigarette in her mouth and she's like, light my cigarette. And he's like, oh, I don't have a match. And she's like, do it. And so he uses his mind. And he has a different method. He kind of does this, where he pinches his forehead a little, versus his brother that uses the finger guns.
Just like.
Speaking of finger guns, Jimmy, Saul Goodman, Kim.
Yeah. But so they are establishing like he's reluctant to do it, but when he does, he can do it he can use his power pretty safely and precisely.
Yeah, he seems to have more control over it than his brother. Like, he went to light something, and then, like, in the backdrop, some, like, curtain or something caught on fire, and he seemed, like, unaware of it.
Yeah, when Biff the Clown, when he tries to light fires, you can see Snake Lady gets nervous.
Yeah.
I mean, they need to get protective suits, so Wilder can definitely be more precise. Vita asks him, hey, if I just called you up in the middle of the day and asked you to drop everything and come home, would you do it? And he says, not if the house was burning to the ground, Vita. Which I don't think was the answer she wanted. At work, we see Wilder singing to himself. He's singing to the radio, but he replaces all the lyrics with firefighting-related terms.
Muzzles, cigarette fire trucks, hydrants, canvas hose, and safety net.
And we quickly find out he doubles as a firefighter. Mm-hmm. So while he's at work, the circus rolls into town and kind of surrounds him in that big empty parking lot. A couple of guys sort of taunt him. One spits gum into the air and it lands into another guy's mouth.
There's like there's elephants and stuff. It's a pretty surreal moment because it's just this huge caravan of trucks just circling into this empty parking lot with him right in the middle.
Yeah, and just like the photo booth, we never really see evidence of people going to this circus or it being an active circus.
Did they ever officially start the carnival during the movie?
No, you do see people there. It doesn't seem that full, but once it's like in operation at night, I think you do see people attending.
Okay, yeah. It's just never really a focus, I guess.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned, fire alarm goes off. So Wilder quickly runs off to join the firemen. And when he leaves, we see Biff the Clown in his trailer kind of looking on menacingly. And he looks at a wedding photo of Wilder and Vita, but he's cut Wilder, his brother, out of the photo. So clearly he likes his brother's wife.
Mm-hmm.
And
so oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, is it? I thought it was Phil the Clown.
And it was definitely Biff.
Definitely Biff.
All right, never mind then.
Adam watched
I mean, Biff sounds like more of a clown name, but I remember someone calling him Phil when he was out of his clown character, and he goes, like, it's Wallace, right?
Yeah, no, that did happen, but he definitely said Biff, and he was like, no,
Okay.
it's Wallace. Yeah, when he's in clown character, he goes by his clown name Biff,
Yeah.
and when he wipes it off, he's Wallace.
Yeah.
So Wilder heads off with the firemen, and it turns out the fire is at his home.
Yeah.
It turns out Vita often will set fire to get Wilder's attention, so all the firemen show up, and the fire chief sits down with her, and he goes, this is mighty suspicious, seeing as how you're under house arrest because of arson.
Yeah.
It turns out that's why she got arrested. And before Wilder heads back to work, Vita asks him to bring the boots and helmet home tonight. She wants to have some fun with them. And if that fire chief looked familiar, he's one of these character actors, that doesn't usually get big roles, but just shows up in a lot of stuff. Emmett Walsh. He has 231 acting credits in IMDb. I'm not sure where I recognized him from, but he looked so familiar. I think most likely it was Blade Runner. He was also like a police chief in that movie. He was the one who put Harrison Ford on the job to go hunt down the robots. So at work, Wilder turns on the AC in his kiosk and blows out a fuse, taking down power for the entire circus. And so this is where we get, I thought, our first Looney Tunes moment, because he angrily walks outside, and with every step, there's orchestral music that's synchronized with it. He stomps over, unplugs the circus, resets the fuse. And then Rex throws his hat down, plugs everything back in.
I mean, it's like in Looney Tunes when they're arguing like duck season versus rabbit season, you know?
Right. Or it's especially like when they do it without words and just keep making angry gestures at each other. Like at this point when they plug everything back in, Wilder angrily clutches his Firehouse magazine. Then he steps outside and it does that. That's terrible. I'm going to cut that out and just put in the actual song. It does that Western sting they always do. Yeah, exactly like that.
That was bad.
It's funny because it almost seems like, like the whole carnival encircles him. It's like they're there just to torment him, you know?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they are. I'm sure Biff was
yeah,
like...
well, it seems Biff seems like he's kind of in charge of where it goes or what they do to an extent.
Yeah, and we will actually soon find out why he's in town.
Yeah.
But the snake lady in their trailer, she says to Biff, "So you guys haven't seen each other in 5 years?"
Yeah.
And Biff says, "Not since he married her." And then Biff finally decides after 5 years of not talking to face his brother. So in his clown makeup and everything, he walks outside and Wilder says to him, "Wallace?" And he goes, "No, not when I'm in makeup. In makeup, I'm Biff."
Phil.
Yeah, Phil, that's right.
Yeah. I don't know where I got Phil from, but I swear that's what I heard.
In makeup, I'm Biff.
Badass Biff. Burning Biff.
And this is actually the moment where they establish that they're brothers. Because Rex says, "Burn him, Biff." And Biff says, "He's my brother, Rex." And Biff tries to intimidate Wilder with a lot of clown talk and stuff. But Wilder isn't having any of it. He kind of just wants to, he doesn't want to deal with his brother.
He's all business.
Exactly. And Biff hears about the air conditioner issue that keeps blowing out their fuse. So he melts it with his mind. And
in front of everyone.
That's right. Yeah, he's not keeping this a secret. This is what he does as a clown. Like, he's known for this, for starting fires. And Biff keeps trying to taunt his brother, but he can't get him to stoop down to his level. He says, "Just like 5 years ago. Hell, just like our whole damn lives, Wilder. You ain't changed a bit."
Well, Wilder was trying to put him down for being a clown.
Yeah, that's right. He kind of says something like, "This coming from my brother,
the clown."
But Wilder Biff wants to get a rise out of him. He wants to prove that Wilder is just like him. He wants him to roll around in the mud.
He's trying to provoke him, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Wilder is very similar to Walter White, where he's very timid, just does whatever he's supposed to do. And throughout the movie, you could see his brother and his wife gradually pushing him toward, becoming more of a badass.
Yeah,
like Walter White.
He's very
more
much
of a Heisenberg.
Right. Yeah. And I would compare him to Chuck again.
Yeah.
Because we've seen many scenes of Jimmy trying to provoke Chuck and prove that Chuck is just like him. When Chuck wants to be all business, Jimmy, at one point, he wants to get Kim out of trouble. So he offers like, "Hey, I'll quit being a lawyer if you help out Kim." And he's like, "No, that would be me giving into blackmail. That would be me admitting that all of this is personal." So just like Jimmy trying to get Chuck to roll around in the mud, you have the same dynamic here. And we'll find out why, I think, in a little bit.
I wonder if Vince Gilligan has a brother.
He does. I think his name is Patrick.
What their relationship is like.
I was wondering that too. It's really hard to find... it's hard to find interviews of Vince Gilligan talking about his early days. He'll reference them, but mostly he'll talk about his most recent shows, Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and I would love...
Slippin' Jimmy.
That night, we finally see Biff without his makeup as Wallace. He calls Wilder and Vita's home, and we should mention, by the way, they are living in a trailer, right? So they're not living the high life. They're currently under the covers. And you can see a big light underneath because Wilder has his fire helmet on, having a good time. And Wilder asks, "Can't we at least have dinner first?" And she says, "No, you just get cramps." Very romantic. So Biff calls, Vita answers, and Wallace can't bring himself to really say anything. He just says, "Vita?" and then hangs up. Clearly, he still pines for her. The next morning, Wilder heads off to another house fire. And while he's there, we see a flashback to him and his brother as kids. And very conveniently, as children, they're both wearing hats that have their names on them. So you can see who Wilder and Wallace are. So their friend, this nerdy kid, Horace, with big glasses on, he shows them his secret clubhouse. And he says, but just to be clear, this is my private secret clubhouse. You can only see the outside. You can't go in. And Wilder says, looks more like an outhouse to me. And besides, it's on fire. So Wilder and Wally, to pick on Horace, they blow the house up, the little secret house with their mind. They blow it up with their minds.
They're both to blame for it.
Yeah, and then we hear someone screaming inside. So they didn't realize there was a man inside, and as like 8-year-olds, they kill this guy. And I kind of love this moment.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking.
Yeah, because
Cool.
you have that whole playful tone for 20 minutes of the movie, and then all of a sudden it gets deadly serious. And it is the kind of traumatic event that would shape the rest of your life, but it's interesting to see how it's shaped the two brothers in very different ways. And I think that shifting of tones, that's definitely a Vince Gilligan trademark.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Well, yeah, if you watch the last episode of Better Call Saul, it quickly transitions from very comedical, that's not a word,
definitely not.
to the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. Now, it is a bit on the nose that after this incident, Wilder has committed the rest of his life to putting out fires as a fireman, but I could see that.
Yeah. His brother just wants to set everything on fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Just wants to kill everybody.
Same old Hector just wants to kill everybody.
Same old Hector just wants to kill everybody.
So Wallace visits Vita at home. He knows that Wilder's out putting out another fire. And so he uses the opportunity to visit his brother's wife. She tells him how she got arrested. So it turns out that Wilder was managing a medical pavilion and often had to shovel snow and ice in the morning. But she kept telling him, why are you breaking your back to shovel all this snow when you could just burn it and melt it with your mind? And she wanted him to do that so he could free up from work earlier and spend more time with her. So one day he's shoveling snow. She decides to go get a canister of gasoline, pours it all over the ice, lights it on fire, and it worked. It melted the snow, but also burned down the medical pavilion. So $18,000 in damage, lost him his job, but he never yelled at her during all of that. And I think that's one of Wilder's downfalls, is that he always keeps his emotions bottled up. And that's where on paper he thinks he's doing the right thing. He didn't yell at her, but emotionally the right thing would be to express yourself.
Yeah, and she probably would have preferred that he yelled at her.
Well, you know what I think is the experience he had as a child sort of traumatized him. I mean, that part's obvious, but basically he's so afraid of expressing any kind of emotion because he thinks it's going to cause a disaster that it's either he's 0 or 1. He's either explosive, like literally, or he has to be completely stone-faced and cool with it as much as he can.
Yeah, well, you can also see, I mean, later on when he starts to get kind of angry about things, you can see he's starting to lose control a little bit, like of his powers. You start to see fires start getting bigger, and so maybe this is part of the reason why he wants to stay calm.
He's like the Hulk.
He knows he might lose control. Yeah, exactly. A fiery Hulk.
It might be there might be a little metaphor here. That as you lose your control of your emotions, things literally burn down.
Or
Wallace,
figuratively.
Yes.
You gotta find the right balance.
Wallace asks Vita who sent the wedding photo, and it turns out it was Wilder. So even though he won't yell at you, he will do
He'll taunt you.
He'll taunt you.
Yeah.
And he asks, why does Wilder hate me? And she says, well, why don't you start with burning off his hair at his damn bachelor party? So we find out what happened 5 years ago. Before the wedding, at the bachelor party, he burned his hair, and that's why he's bald and burn scarred on his head. And Wallace says, he could have fought back. And this is also where we see that he doesn't have quite as much control over his powers because Vida asks him to light her cigarette, which we saw Wilder do, but Wallace says, I can't do that, not without burning your face off.
Yeah. So even 5 years ago, you see that Wallace, he wants to provoke his brother into embracing his true identity.
Yeah.
You know, and also throughout, once Wallace is out of his clown uniform, he and his brother dress very similarly and kind of look pretty similar, which makes sense because they're brothers. So one way, especially around this point in the film, I started to read it as if this is like a metaphor for two sides of the same person. So this is all kind of like an allegory for the main character's internal conflict.
And I think specifically the Wallace side of this equation, I think it's just sort of him trying to deal with the guilt of having killed this person at an early age. And I think he looks at Wilder having handled it by completely, seemingly subduing his emotions, right? He just seems totally straight-laced and fine. And I think that makes Wallace very uncomfortable. And that's part of why he's been trying to rattle him for the last 3 decades and why he almost killed him, I guess, 5 years ago, burning his hair off. And he announces to Vida that he's going to go on the David Letterman show. He wants to make money on commercials, etc. And we know that resonates with Vida because that's exactly what she wants her husband to do. Wilder returns home and sees them on the roof. And Wallace shouts to him, like we alluded to earlier, Mon frere! And we get some silent sort of taunting between them. We learn in this scene that the firemen that Wilder works with are also a cappella singers.
Yep.
So as they all eat together, they're singing in the background. And I kind of love this scene. You see Wilder and Wallace just making faces at each other. Like Wallace kind of licks his lips. Wilder clenches and unclenches his jaw.
Yeah.
Well, and also during this, this almost reminds me of like the dwarves gathering, like in The Hobbit, inside of the little home, and they're all singing and drinking together.
Knives bend the forks, smash the bottles and burn the corks.
But during this scene, Vida is like kind of getting really close to Wilder and like kind of hanging out on his lap, and so Wilder is eyeing Wallace almost to taunt him and be like, look, she's with me, buddy.
And she notices that Wilder is using her to provoke his brother. So she kind of looks annoyed at him and storms off.
Walks away, right? Which we're already, like, we've already seen a few cracks in their relationship now, because you see that she doesn't want to really totally side with Wilder.
Right. And you can see why. She's constantly fighting for him, and he never really does anything to show her affection. I mean, he'll kiss her and everything like that, but clearly he just prioritizes his job over her, doesn't do any romantic gestures, never surprises her or anything.
Right, because I think he's too timid and afraid to make any kind of splash or impact.
Yeah, exactly. That night, we find out why Wallace is in town, and it's because he wants to tell his brother that he's going public on the Letterman show. Wilder, he's flabbergasted.
What? Are you insane? Yeah, see, I knew you'd say that, yeah.
And he starts talking about all the reasons why he shouldn't do it. You know, people are going to be ripping you apart in test tubes, studying you. Yeah. They're going to blame you for arson, every crime between here and he mentions the clubhouse that they burned down. And at that mention, Wallace kind of goes crazy. He says, no one cares about that anymore. Why do you keep bringing that up?
Which, it's very ironic and unfortunate, because Wallace has much less control over his power than Wilder. So if Wilder was the one who wanted to go public and go on the Letterman show and do like magic tricks and whatnot, I think he could do it, and he probably could get, rich and potentially become like the most famous, powerful person in the world, because he's like literally has magical powers, right?
Right.
Wallace does too, but for him it's much more dangerous.
Yeah,
and
I wouldn't want to be.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wouldn't want to be in the audience.
No. So on the whole, this really kind of does remind me of Walter White, because he has tremendous power. And you see, like, he was making a lot of progress and had the potential to become extremely wealthy when he was working with the gray matter, when he founded the Gray Matter company. But for one reason or another, he kind of got screwed and decided rather than to flex his ability and his genius, he just kind of became this timid teacher who gets shat on all the time, right?
Right.
But then once he finally did decide to flex his power, everything blew up and it caused just utter chaos and destruction.
Yes. And there's also a pretty similar, like we've already mentioned a few times, but you have the Jimmy Chuck parallel, where the only reason that Wallace hasn't already gone public is because he knows that his brother is so paranoid about it and thinks it would be such a bad idea. Just like Jimmy essentially has superpowers. When he wants to persuade people and manipulate people, he can do it better than anyone. But he tried to go in the straight and narrow purely for his brother Chuck. So it's almost an identical dynamic here.
Yeah. And Chuck compares Jimmy getting a law degree to giving a gorilla a machine gun, right?
Yeah.
Now, like a machine gun isn't inherently an evil technology. It depends on how you use it. And I think Vince Gilligan's very interested in the idea of power and ability, and what it takes to direct it in a productive way rather than in a destructive way. And I think what we often see is the thing necessary to push those abilities towards something productive and good is for the person with those powers to have some kind of internal and strong moral compass. Now, Wilder in this movie doesn't, rather than try to form that moral compass and use his powers in a productive way, he decides just not even to attempt it.
Yeah, exactly. And at this, so Wallace doesn't want to deal with Wilder's paranoia anymore. He just wants to be rich for a change. So he storms off and says, "I'll see you in the funny papers." And as he drives off, he sings to himself.
They're gonna put me in the movies. They're gonna make a big star out of me.
So I think he's thinking about the future, where he's gonna be rich.
It's funny. He's kind of aiming low. Like if you could do what he could do, just impressing people and wowing them with your ability is the least of the things you could do with that.
What would you do if you had this power?
I mean, I would try to figure out if I'm actually producing like free energy, like compared to how much I'm eating and like let's say
like
when I use this power.
After.
Yeah, exactly. So if it turns out that I'm actually violating like a law of thermodynamics, then you could basically figure out how to take advantage of that and produce free energy for the entire world.
Think about how much
and then
Bitcoin
I would sell
you
it,
could mine.
and I would sell it for a lot. Yeah. I would mine Bitcoin. I would convert it into Bitcoin mining energy. Or I could use it to heat up, like I could set a bunch of Guinness World Records, like the world's largest soup.
You wouldn't be afraid of the scientist angle? They would just want to study you?
I'd just burn them if they got too
Burn 'em,
close
yeah,
to me.
there you go.
Well, nah, they'd probably like shoot you with a dart that knocks you out, though, and then put you in a fireproof
that's definitely an
environment. Yeah, no,
possibility.
I think if they wanted you, they could get you.
All right, well, have fun.
You know what I would do? Before revealing it to the public, I would talk to Elon Musk, because I think he would actually be interested in this and not give me over to like the government scientists who would probe me. And so once I did reveal my abilities, I'd be under his protection. And also I feel like he would have good ideas for how to harness my power.
Just tweet at
Although
Elon
he
Musk.
might end up just strapping me to the bottom of a rocket.
You tweet at Elon Musk, "Hey, I've got magic. Just DM me."
Yeah.
So back at the carnival, is a kind of cool shot where an upset Wallace, he heads to the top of the Ferris wheel for some alone time, and we zoom all the way out from the Ferris wheel back into Wilder's house, as if they can look out their window and see the carnival in the distance.
That was a cool camera thing.
Did that shot, like the far view of the carnival, remind you of anything, Adam? Because it reminded you and I of something.
Monkey Island?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, the clearing.
Yeah,
Didn't it look
Totally.
just like that?
Yeah, it really did. You have like the little ring of lights
Yep.
amidst this kind of dark blue map.
Yep.
Gil, maybe in the edits you'll have to pull that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's I've got to. I don't know how large the crossover audience is between Monkey Island fans and Wilder Napalm fans.
Yes.
But there is a game we used to play called The Secret of Monkey Island.
It probably came out around the same time as this movie.
That's true. A couple years before, I think.
It was a LucasArts point and click adventure game.
One of the best games ever. And there is a carnival at one point, and it's located in the clearing, so it just aesthetically looks similar to this. I'll put it in. If you're watching this, I'll put a clip in. Well, finally, we reach D-Day. The cops arrive to remove Vita's ankle monitor. She excitedly opens the door and accidentally breaks one of the cops' nose.
Looney Tunes.
Yeah, that's some of the slapstick humor. But they take it off her ankle. She immediately runs to Wilder's photo kiosk, very excited. She wants to make love in the booth, or at least just find some hedges. This is where she says, "I'm raring to go." And then she kind of looks down, and she's like, "Oh, you're not." And so she says, "What if we just go for a walk instead?" But he says he's waiting for a surprise visit from his supervisor. "I don't want to lose my job."
I feel like he's waiting for that visit every single day. So that's why he's so following the rules of his job, 9 to 5 exactly. Because any day at any time, the supervisor might show up.
Yeah. And I think the unspoken part of that sentence is he doesn't want to lose his job again.
Yeah.
Because the last time he did, it was her fault because she burned down the pavilion. And she asked,
Still, Wilder doesn't realize what a lucky man he is.
I know. She asked, "What are we doing tonight?" And he's busy though tonight because he's going to be calling bingo for the women's auxiliary.
So they've been waiting like over a year for her to get freed, and he's like, "I'm too busy tonight because I'm gonna be Jimmy McGill at the bingo place calling out numbers for all the old people."
And that's what Alone was.
I know.
And he even says, "I've missed bingo how many times because you didn't want me to leave you alone at home. Well, tonight you're allowed to leave the house, so you don't need me there. Hey, why don't you come to bingo?" Because that's what she wants to do with her first night of freedom.
It's like, what's his problem? Like, why is he doing this?
Well, he definitely, I think, resents her to some extent because she is pushing him to use his powers when he doesn't want to. And this is another example of him doing the right thing on paper. He's going to do some volunteer work. But again, he's doing something that he knows is wrong on the emotional level because he knew today was D-Day. He can't miss bingo this one night to be with his wife. What do you think?
Right,
Adam?
they had a calendar specifically leading up to this date. It was not like it was a surprise.
Right. But he knows what he's doing is wrong because when she walks away, he kind of says to himself quietly, "Sorry."
Yeah.
Well, it's a big mistake because where does she go next? A little puppy starts following her around, and it turns out it's
the puppy
Wallace.
wearing like a little party hat on. It was like a really, really tiny little chihuahua looking thing.
And there's a sort
hat.
of like twinkly music as it runs around.
Yeah.
And it's Wallace's puppy. He had it follow her so he can approach her and say, "Hey, you found my dog." And invites her to go see a quartet play in the park. And Wallace says, "I do love Beethoven." And she corrects him, "Actually, it's Mozart we're listening to." And then afterward, she says, "I better get home." And he says, "Well, how about some fireworks instead?" And they go to a mini golf course where they have fireworks every Saturday, I think. Mm-hmm. So they're off having a great time while Wilder is calling bingo, and he's thinking of his wife. Well, he's actually not at bingo yet. He's still sitting in his little booth, and he's writing her name over and over in a notepad. So clearly he's thinking about her. He calls home to speak to her, but she's not there. She's with Wallace. And then while he's calling bingo, his wife is with his brother playing golf. And I enjoyed the bingo scenes, by the way, where every time he calls out a number, you see everybody's markers all hitting the table.
Yeah.
47.
That kind of focus on the mundane reminded me a lot of Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. Then Wallace finally makes his move. He goes up behind Vida to help her with her shot. And he gets so excited that stuff around them just starts to melt and burn. And then when they finally make out, they burn the entire place down.
Yeah.
Later on, Wilder refers to it as their sex fire.
Yeah.
Guys, put out your sex fire. And at bingo, Wilder is still thinking of his wife because he thinks he sees her. And then when the person turns around, it's just a guy with long hair.
So like, I think what's from the perspective of Wilder and Wallace are sort of two sides of the same person. Like they kind of share an identity. I think what's happening with Wallace, with everything lighting up in flames and going awry, and causing people to run away for their lives, this is what he's afraid will happen if he lives, right? Vida means life. Choosing to kind of embrace her and go along with this rather than do bingo, to him is like, well, if I do that, probably everything's going to blow up and explode.
Bingo is his HHM.
Yeah.
He puts everything into his job, into volunteering, but to the detriment of his entire private life. And I think it is out of fear.
If he chooses to really live and have fun and embrace life, he fears for just utter destruction around him.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the fire alarm goes off, so he races off to the mini golf course with his a cappella firemen. As they put out the fire, they're singing Ring of Fire. We should also mention that I believe all the songs they sing are fire themed.
Yeah. It's hard to tell with the first one, though.
Yeah.
That was mostly humming.
That's right.
Yeah.
During the fire, Wilder has another flashback where, as a child, they watched the firemen pull the burned corpse out of the clubhouse they burned down.
That was
pretty
kind of creepy. Yeah, that was like charred.
Yeah, in that moment, I kind of had that, like, wow, this is PG-13. That's surprising, because that was pretty gruesome and very melancholy. And I was watching another show yesterday with our younger brother, Daniel, and it uses a flashback in a very similar way where it shows us this very somber memory. And he asked me, like, is flashback a good filmmaking technique? Because I think it often gets put in the same category as voiceover, where it's sort of considered cheating, where you just cut to something that happened in the past. What do you guys think about flashback?
I mean, it's kind of in between because that is showing rather than telling, technically,
Right.
Which is supposedly the right way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about context. So probably the majority of the time that it's used is probably kind of a lazy shortcut. But it also makes sense in the context of that the human mind does work that way. You get reminded of something and you kind of replay a memory in your head. So
Yeah,
for me, basically every 10 seconds I see a burnt corpse just lingering in my consciousness.
In general, I prefer to see things in a movie or show in the order they happened. So I guess I would prefer if we saw that at the way start of the movie.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah, because it's almost like you're hiding information from us just because you wanted to reveal it and surprise us later when the characters already knew about this from the start.
Right.
I don't know.
I think a modern Vince Gilligan probably would have just shown... All right, so if this was split into multiple episodes, then he would have shown different segments of that childhood event at the beginning, like a cold open.
Possibly.
And as a single movie, he potentially would have just shown the full sequence at the beginning. Because we do see that in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Usually, if there is a flashback, it's shown without context right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, this isn't exactly the same, but in general, when I'm watching a movie, I don't like the whole 10 hours earlier thing.
Yeah.
Just show it to me in the order it happened.
Especially in Birds of Prey.
Oh, yeah.
It was so annoying.
That was super confusing, too, because they kept doing it different times.
Yeah,
I can't even keep track.
Every time the plot starts to progress, it's like, but wait, 8 hours earlier.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is with the modern Vince Gilligan comment, the way he does use flashback, you're right. It's often the cold open of an episode, but it does give us crucial pieces of information that explain how the characters act pretty far into the series. Right, we meet Jimmy McGill and Chuck, and we don't really know their background. And part of the fun is asking what makes them tick and slowly learning. But I do think that in general, and I think it's the same here, the flashbacks are in the context of they would be on the character's mind.
Definitely, they're definitely showing them to tell us this is going through, what's his name, Wilder's head right now. Yeah,
that is one thing. If you didn't watch the movie, I feel like people are going to get confused over Wilder, Wallace. Wait, which one was the bad guy? So I'm trying to keep reminding us. But yeah, I think like everything else, including voiceover and any technique, it all depends on the context. And I think flashbacks often work for me, and usually it's when it's in the context of fitting what would be on a character's mind. They're at a point where they would be reflecting back on something, but those rules are never hard and fast. We could see a flashback that works for some reason, even when it's not in that context. Anyway, after that memory and after all day of not being able to reach his wife, coming home from the mini golf fire, Wilder just looks defeated, and he's listening to his men singing that I don't want to set the world on fire.
Which to me, I always associate that with the Fallout commercial. Yeah.
Right, the ink spots. And by the way, Adam, I just remembered the mini golf fire from Tell 'em Steve Dave.
Tell 'em Steve Dave, yeah.
Again, there's got to be one person in our audience that understands the Wilder Napalm, Monkey Island, and Tell 'em Steve Dave references.
Yeah.
We get back home. This is about where the movie starts to go off the rails for me, because there is some interesting stuff going on with character dynamics where you can talk about why the characters are doing what they're doing. This is kind of the turning point of the movie where people start to say all that stuff out loud, and it starts to feel pretty soap opera to me. And you start to get a lot of really bad special effects, slapstick kind of firefights and stuff like that. But Wilder walks into his trailer and through the roof sees the silhouette of Vida and Wallace. So he storms outside, throws the ladder.
And he can also see he can see the roof bouncing up and down while he's inside it.
Right. So in his mind, they're canoodling. Yeah. He goes outside. He takes the
definitely a noodle
down.
Involved.
He wasn't raring to go.
He was raring to drive a tractor,
which is what happens. Next.
I liked that. I liked that.
I like that too.
Yeah, no, this
driving
is
around the house.
I like that too. So he's so angry at them, but as always, he will not talk. He will not express his anger. So instead, he gets in a lawnmower and starts driving around the trailer all night.
Yep.
I felt that was some good acting, like in his face, because. Have you ever felt just such searing anger that you couldn't even, all you could do is just stare and not even say anything?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's basically what I feel all the time.
Yeah. I actually, that actor, I should pull up his name because I did think he generally did a good job in the movie. Like, I kind of loved his deadpan demeanor.
It's just funny how he was going on that lawnmower so long. He was the one who was rightfully angry. And then Wallace and Vida are the ones that start getting annoyed with him. Like, just stop already.
We didn't do anything. We didn't do it. Say something.
Right.
Well, yeah, because he's going for hours and hours until it's the morning, and they're basically he pulls the ladder away so that they can't climb down off the roof, so that they'd have to jump. And if they jump, they have to face him, who's driving around in circles like a shark on this little lawnmower.
His name, by the way, the actor is Arliss Howard. Vida is Deborah Winger. I realized the only actors we named were Jim Varney and Dennis Quaid. So he's driving around the entire night. Vida shouts at him, "We didn't do anything. Say something." The next morning, she insists that the three of them need to sit down and talk. She says that her husband, Wilder, he's always repressing his emotions. It's time to get them on the table. He finally stops mowing the lawn, and then Wallace offers him plate, 2 eggs and bacon. but he turns the bacon into a sad face. And he goes, this is how I feel right now. And as always, he tries to get Wilder down on his level. He says, come on, just take a swing at me already so we can get this over with. Wilder continues to refuse. So Wallace says, it's official. You are a frightened coward. And finally, can't take it anymore. Wilder pulls him out of the trailer, knocks him down, puts the lawnmower on him. Was he going to kill him there?
It looked like he was trying to castrate him.
Right. Yeah, that's
I thought he just wanted to blend his entire body. I think he was legitimately trying to start the mower.
That's kind of, I guess what they're saying is his emotions are so bottled up that when he finally lets them out, it's actually lethal.
Right, like the only emotion that's strong enough for him to reveal it is like he has to have literally murderous rage.
It's also he has murderous rage, and even with that, he's still not willing to use his powers. He's still trying to kill his own brother through other means.
He also didn't sleep the night before at all.
Right.
So that affects your behavior. Much like another character on Better Call Saul who doesn't sleep much.
Lalo.
Well, yeah, that one's a bit of a stretch. He doesn't get a chance to start the lawnmower because his wife throws something at him while he's distracted. Wallace uses his powers to melt the lawnmower.
Well, then he blow it up in the air.
He blows it up in the air, which knocks Wilder against the house. And then Wallace shouts at him,
You're dead, white boy! Let's go pick out a nice wreath for you, because you're freaking dead!
And then points the finger guns at him, lights a fire around him.
That does kind of remind me of Saul Goodman taunting Howard, being like, I shoot lightning bolts out of my fingertips. I'm a god.
Vita puts out the fire with some hose, and then we get more fighting between them. So there's a lot of slapstick stuff here. So they end up fighting underneath the trailer. Wilder's worried about Vita, so he tries to stand up, and then he hits his head. It makes a loud bonk noise, and he gets knocked out.
Vita! Are you okay?
Wallace pops his head up into the trailer, and she sprays him with the fire extinguisher. And Wallace
Which looked like whipped cream. Or
it really
did.
did.
Shaving cream.
Shaving cream.
I guarantee you that was shaving cream.
It was absolutely shaving cream.
Have you ever fired a fire extinguisher?
Mm-mm.
You have, right?
No.
I thought
back
you
in
used
your
to,
college days.
Yeah, I thought you used to ride around in a chair with a fire extinguisher.
Not with the fire extinguisher.
Oh, you just push the chair.
Yeah, no. In the art building, we used to race each other with the wheelie chairs down the hallway.
I kept telling people using fire extinguishers.
For one of my projects, I made a flash game of that where you could pick a character from our class and then you race top view around a track with a chair.
You put in the chair physics and everything?
Yeah, I don't think I ever finished the game. I don't know. I think I still got a good grade. That was a lot of work.
Anyway, I won't go down a whole rabbit hole of the grading standards that you faced in your life versus mine.
Yeah, that's for another time.
Wallace keeps yelling stuff like, use your powers for once. But ultimately, in their fight, they burn the house down, and all three of them go to prison. In jail, Vita apologizes, but her and Wallace both kind of acknowledge that all three of them, including Wilder, share in the blame. Wilder does not take very kindly to that, because his view is, what did I do? I went to go call bingo at the women's auxiliary while you guys set a sex fire at the mini golf course. And the one F-bomb in the movie, he says, F you both. And, he definitely shares in some of the blame, but I kind of felt a lot of what he felt in that scene. Adam?
I agree. I think in that moment, I wanted him to just totally blend his brother in the more. Pretty much everything he did was in. You couldn't call it self-defense necessarily, but they really screwed him over big time.
They did. And Rex shows
he's
up.
been trying to just be a good guy and not make any waves.
Yeah. Now he does. He's got problems. He's too emotionally repressed. But there are ways to take care of that other than burning a house down or a mini golf course or canoodling with his brother. And I'm going to stop saying that word. I don't know why I keep saying that.
Well, you're worried about the algorithm.
Yeah. Rex shows up to bail them out by putting more of their rides on collateral, but Wilder refuses to come along. He says, I can't think of two people I hate more than you guys. So they leave jail, leave him behind. But Vida first apologizes to him. She explains everything. She was suckered over by his brother because she wanted Wilder's love. And when she didn't get it, she wanted anyone's love and settled for his brother. And she understands if that's unforgivable. But if tomorrow, Wilder, you wake up and you decide you want me back, you're going to have to fight for me.
I mean, to be honest, it seems like she's better off with Wallace. Like, they seem much better together.
They do seem like a much better fit. After jail, Wilder eventually gets out. He goes back at night. The house is burned down, so he can't go there. So instead, he goes back to his kiosk. Vida goes back to the firehouse.
It's like Saul sleeping in the back of the nail salon.
That was the first thought I had, because he goes to sleep in this tiny kiosk. He's curled up in a ball. And things get a little convoluted here. I didn't fully get it until I rewatched it. But basically, Wilder's at the kiosk. His wife, Vida, is at the firehouse. And she asked one of his men to drop off some sort of apology love notes at the kiosk. He hasn't found the notes yet, so Jimmy McGill style, he's just sulking and laying on the floor. In his trailer, Wallace says, wait, maybe Wilder thinks that Vida is still with me. So he's going to let his brother believe that. So he tells Rex, I'm skipping the show tonight. I got some family business to take care of. But don't worry, tomorrow we're off to Hollywood. So Wallace sends a couple of his men outside to blast music outside the kiosk and wake up Wilder. And the song is She's a Lady by Tom Jones, with lines like, the lady is mine. So it's basically Wallace telling his brother, Vida is with me. And Vida does this dance in his trailer, or Wallace does this dance in his trailer. So when Wilder looks over, it looks like he's with Vida. But then Wilder finds the notes. It says, I'm sorry, I'm loving you, come get me. So he interprets the come get me as, I'm essentially kidnapped by your brother. Come rescue me. He doesn't see that she left a fourth note that said, I'm at the firehouse. So because he didn't see that, he thinks that Wallace is holding on to her. So he goes out to fight his brother, and he's asking, where's Vida? And I'll pause there and say that I think one of the toughest things in storytelling is to create a conflict between two smart people. Because in an ideal world, if we're all being smart and doing the right thing, why should there ever be conflict between us? And that's how you get great stories like the Jimmy-Chuck rivalry, because both of them are acting what they think is their best interest, but it ends up creating a big conflict between them. The easiest way to create conflict is misunderstanding. Mm-hmm. And I hate that. When you're watching a movie, yeah, when there's this big conflict and it could be resolved with 2 seconds of explanation, like in this case, you just didn't see the note that said, I'm at the firehouse. Now, I will say it does somewhat work here because only one of them is misunderstanding, Wilder. Wallace is purposely taking advantage of the situation. He knows Vida's not with him.
They still have legitimate grounds for conflict. The conflict isn't rooted in misunderstanding. In this case, a misunderstanding is just one little domino.
Right, which someone is taking advantage of.
Yeah.
It felt a little funny to me that that's just the one note of the 4 that he missed.
Right. And you have to really pay attention because that would have been an easy thing to miss.
Which we did the first time I saw the note, and I was like, wait, so he didn't see the note? What's going on?
Right,
and
like
then I rewatched
you see it kind of like on the ground outside of the kiosk, and it's all dirty and looks like just trash.
Yeah, Wilder steps on it, and then the wind blows and unfolds it so we can see it. And it did occur to me that I feel like if Vince Gilligan wrote this today, he would have wrote it in a way where Wilder knew where Vida was, but he had a choice to make. Do I go be with my wife, or do I go seek revenge against my brother? And that would have been interesting. So we get the final confrontation. Wilder keeps demanding to know, where's Vida? And so Wallace says,
out buying more condoms. Why?
So Wilder blows the door off Wallace's trailer. He's basically letting loose now. He's using all of his powers. And he demands again, where's Vida? And Wallace says,
She's over at the hospital being treated for thigh chafe. Once you've had a clown, you never go back.
That they do say that. That's true.
That's true.
And then see how big those clown shoes are?
Oh, yeah. You know what they say about shoes?
Yeah.
Wilder blows up a truck, and they have a full-on firefight. Wallace keeps shouting, I'm fighting for you, baby. I'm fighting for you, because she thinks he's trapped in the trailer. Mm-hmm. But Wallace finally admits Vida isn't there because she's a loser like you. They yell at each other, and the truth starts to come out. Wallace breaks down. He says, since we were kids, you made me think we were murderers. We didn't know the man was in the clubhouse. And he kind of starts to cry. And he kind of hugs Wilder. And that's where we start to see that a lot of what's been driving his behavior is this guilt. Part of why he resents Wilder is because he made him feel like a murderer. Because they are murderers. Shouldn't have burned the clubhouse down.
Manslaughter.
Yeah, exactly. I guess that's not murder, right?
No, they're just slaughterers of
they're just,
man.
They're just manslaughterers. But I think this is a major turning point. I think at this point, Wilder starts to understand Wallace, starts to see how vulnerable he is. But Wallace is pretty charged up here and pretty angry. So outside, firemen and Vida show up because they started this big fire, and the trailer explodes. But thankfully, Wallace and Wilder both survive. Wilder wears that fire protection suit, Chekhov's fire protection suit.
Yeah.
And Wallace comes out in his Dr. Napalm outfit with the wad.
Or as Ellen would say, jack off's fire protection suit.
Yeah, that's why we looked at each other. Because everyone knows the saying, Chekhov's gun. When a gun shows up early in a movie, you know it's going to show up again later and be used. And so we're watching a movie, there's a gun, Helen turns to me. And he goes, Jagoff's gun.
Yeah.
I was right.
So like I said, Wilder doesn't want to fight anymore, but Wallace is still angry. But Wilder points out there's no point in fighting anymore. This whole thing was because I didn't want you to go public. Well, it's because I thought you were with my wife. It turns out you're not. I didn't want you to go public. Well, at this point, we've been fighting out in public. It's too late. So let's just stop fighting.
Cat's out of the bag.
Exactly. That's not good enough for Wallace, though. You made me feel like crap for 32 years. You can't just wipe that away. Now get up and flame on.
Now get up and flame on!
Yeah.
And then he starts doing the
and
Johnny
his whole
Storm
body,
thing.
his whole body lights on fire.
That's right.
So I think this is pretty interesting because this shows he's not just mad about this pressure to keep everything private, right? And he's not just angry at his brother for not embracing who he is and embracing his powers. Wallace was made to feel bad for what they did, and he, rather than blaming himself and his own actions or even just throwing his hands up and saying it was the circumstances and we had no idea, he's kind of pinning it on Wilder because Wilder feels the guilt, and the fact that Wilder feels the guilt makes Wallace feel it too.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's where I was saying earlier, all the subtext at this point becomes text, which I think is pretty natural to happen, but it definitely takes a lot of finesse for it not to come off as soap opera-y.
Random, but you know what was weird? When they showed that flashback of them burning down that little clubhouse, their friend was smiling afterward.
I know.
Do you remember that? That was weird.
I couldn't tell if he was smiling or if he was. Sometimes when people are crying, they sort of.
It really looked like he was smiling.
Yeah, I'll put the clip. I'll put the clip in. You can be
maybe the child actor was just bad.
Also, when people squint, don't they sometimes smile like that? Wilder continues refusing to fight while Wallace keeps blowing stuff up. And he starts to use a sort of hip thrust to do it instead of finger guns. He like swings his hips around and like.
So like this forward. Kind of felt like a comical like superhero fight.
It did, and actually, it did feel like a comical superhero fight. And Vince Gilligan would go on to write Hancock, the superhero comedy.
Will Smith.
He wrote, with Will Smith. Apparently, so that movie was directed by Peter Berg, who directed Battleship and a few other big movies. And he told this story where apparently Will Smith is pretty tough to work with if you're a writer, because he will tear this. Yeah, I know. He smacked Vince Gilligan. So, but he made Vince Gilligan rewrite that script a bunch of times. On its 10th draft, Vince Gilligan basically said, and I don't know if he wrote all 10 drafts. I think there was already an existing one. So Vince Gilligan was doing rewrites. And after the 10th draft, he basically said, I'm quitting because there's a certain TV show I want to go work on. And Peter Berg was like, don't write some stupid show about a chemistry teacher who cooks meth. Yeah. That's stupid. And Peter Berg told the story how he was cursing at Vince and yelling at him, but has since realized that he probably made the right choice. and Peter apologized. So Vita takes out a fire hose and puts the fire out. So Wallace, his whole body's on fire, not anymore. And he sees that his powers don't work too well when he's submerged in water. So at this point, he's defeated. Wilder and Vita kiss. He's finally decided. He fought for her. That's what she wanted. And it finally happened. And Wilder helps Wallace up from the ground, hugs him. So I think at this point, Wallace got what he wants. He has the approval of his brother. And they give themselves up for arrest. So at this point, pretty much, I think all is well. And later, we see Vita and Wallace hanging out on the roof. And they have a house now. They no longer living in that trailer, which burned down. And we see that, Vita and Wilder are hanging out on the roof. And now he's under house arrest for the fire at the carnival. And it seems like they're going to live happily ever after. And they're watching TV. We hear Wallace is on the Letterman show.
Dr. Napalm. Great to see you. How are you? How much time do you actually have left? Is it 4 months until your parole? That's correct, David.
They mention a commercial he was in, so his dreams are coming true. He's Dr. Napalm. He's making money. And Wilder and Vita start to kiss. I think maybe they're going to make love on the roof like she always wanted. And Wilder has achieved his other dream. We see a house outside. He's now a lawnmower repairman. Or he has his own lawnmower repair service.
Yeah.
Now,
is there any indication that's... I mean, we see him trying to repair... He's had a car that was broken down for like 5 years, and every night we see him trying to fix it.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess that's the only indication we got that he'd be interested in like mechanics.
And we know that his lawnmower was destroyed. So maybe he fixed it and was like, hey, I'm pretty good at fixing lawnmowers. And it's also a way for him to work from home because he's under house arrest.
How many people need to get their lawnmower repaired? Like,
well, now that Dr. Napalm is out in public.
Oh, they're working together. Destroy a lawnmower, go get it repaired.
That's what they're doing. And we end with the group of firemen are outside his house singing this song called Heat Wave. Some of the lyrics...
They just kind of pop up out of the corner. It's kind of funny. It felt a little stupid, but
we kind of shook our heads at it.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God. But as it continued and the credits started rolling, I kind of thought it was funny.
Whenever I'm with her, something inside.
And you see them credited, I forget the name, but you see them credited as a group. I think they're an actual a cappella group.
They kind of have like a barbershop quartet sort of vibe.
Yeah, definitely. And they were fun. When they first started singing halfway through the movie, I thought it was pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
They were a nice touch. But that's where we reach the end.
The Mighty Echoes.
The Mighty Echoes. There you go. So I guess at this point, any other thoughts on the movie that we didn't mention?
I wish they would explain the rules of their powers a little better, because my understanding at first, I thought they could just set fires, right? But there was one scene where Wallace was lying down on the grass and he like caused the entire field to catch on fire, and then he just brought the fire right back and extinguished it.
You see his eyes roll into the back of his head, and they're all white.
Yeah. So you would think when he set the golf course on fire, he probably could have put it out.
Right.
Yeah.
We also see that they can create balls of fire and throw them at each other.
Unless he was worried about going public with his powers, and people would question, wait, how did all that fire just extinguish itself? And then they would start to question it.
Well, we know he wants to go public.
Yeah, but maybe at the time he was still trying to abide by his brother's wishes.
Right. Though my interpretation of that scene when he lit the whole yard on fire, I don't think he was really in control. It was very emotional at that moment. Mm-hmm. So I think by not really using their powers a whole lot over the last 3 decades, they probably didn't develop them too much. They haven't explored them that much. And we were saying... Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, nobody has scrutinized this movie as much as we have or thought about it as much as we have, probably besides Vince Gilligan, since he first wrote it 3 decades ago.
Well, and so on the note of just how long ago he created this, I'm trying to think about whether if we had watched this back then, would anyone have been able to realize that this person was like a very promising writer, and that like one day he would go on to be seen as a genius? I think there's little like elements in there that you could pick up on that might give you a sign like, okay, this isn't just your ordinary like film screenwriter. There's something more here that can be matured and balanced out to create like an extremely competent writer. I think there's a couple threads in there, like the way that you can actually we've squeezed out as much interpretation out of this movie as the movie. Like we spent as much time talking about this movie as the actual length of the film, right? And you can't do that with every movie. And if you do, you're basically, with some movies, you're basically just kind of poking fun at from scene to scene. But this actually did make me think a lot, because we can look at his current work, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and now look back and say, okay, we see a lot of early seeds that were planted and all these threads related to morality, internal conflict, and like making decisions about what to do with your own abilities and how to either go down a bad choice road or good choice road, right? And I just wonder, could someone have watched this movie back then and realized, okay, this is not just your ordinary writer? I don't think I would have, but I think with my retro spectacles on, like you can look at it and say, wow, this is like, there's something here, even if the movie itself isn't that remarkable.
Yeah, and I think if you look at what the critics were saying about it when it first came out, it would seem like, no, people were not recognizing it, but there's a reason that Vince Gilligan won that screenwriting competition with that script he wrote, Home Fries, and there's a reason that they wanted to get this movie made, and the producer was so protective of the script. I think if you read the script, probably where you don't get any of the confusing tone, and where who knows how much it changed between what was actually written and what ended up on screen. But the director says not that much was changed, but clearly people read his work and were able to recognize something there. I actually bought a copy of the script. I don't have it yet. I should have it in the next day or two, because I was curious to see even just the scene descriptions, because I know for Breaking Bad and for Better Call Saul, the screenplays are much more detailed than your average screenplay. Usually what they say is that your scene descriptions should be as minimal as possible. But if you read a Breaking Bad script, it feels a lot more like reading a book. And so I am curious to at least take a glance at the script for this movie. And I think that's where probably some of the genius, some of his talent shines through a bit more, is my guess. But Adam, you actually mentioned to me that you watched the Siskel and Ebert review for this movie, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what was your take? Did they recognize any of what we're talking about here?
I think they did say that they liked some of the themes that the film touched on, but then felt that it delved too too much into just like the action and the explosions and silliness. So overall, they did not like the film. And they made a joke because I guess a lot of movies with fire and pyrotechnics were coming out around that time. So Ebert was like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm guessing the cost of pyrotechnics and like flame has gone down lately because everyone's trying to capitalize on it.
I guess that was the CGI of the early 90s, like where CGI is overused. Back then. It was like, every other scene, everything's on fire.
Yeah. So I think they thought it just like similar to you, actually. Like I think they felt like the last act just like delved too much into this kind of like spectacle of like mildly okay special effects.
Right. Yeah, so I would agree with that. And I think in general, one thing that Better Call Saul has trained us to do is really engage with a story and a work of art because we have so much trust in the writer, in the writers and the creators behind the show, that we feel like if we have a conversation about it, if we try to dig under the surface, there is something to find there. And I realize that when I'm not talking about a show with you or on YouTube, I don't always do that. And I can't think of a lot of movies where I've been able to dig into a character as much as we do with Jimmy McGill or Walter White. And that's one thing I'm excited about with this podcast, is to start doing that with other movies. You know, hopefully we're not disappointed to find that Vince Gilligan is the only one who cracked the code on how to write interesting characters.
Well, I think this movie's sort of a lesson to like when you consume a piece of art, like give the creator a chance, like give them the benefit of the doubt, and assume that they're intelligent until proven otherwise. So if you dig the way we dug into this movie, we didn't really reach anything on a thematic level or a storytelling level that was stupid or contradictory. There were things that felt silly and out of place or like, you know, a more mature Vince Gilligan wouldn't do. But when you get down into like the basic morals and themes, it does feel pretty consistent and thought-provoking. There's a lot of other movies that people love that are coming out, you know, every day, where if you really dug into them the way we did with this movie, it wouldn't make any sense.
And with that, what's our sign off for the One Take podcast?
Did you want to do a little mini One Taste segment?
So I have a passion. I'd say besides movies and storytelling, my other passion is beverages. Like when we were in Japan, every street corner would have a different vending machine.
We love the vending machines in Japan, especially the coffee ones.
That's right.
Oh my God.
But every time we passed one, I would love to stop, look at what are the different beverages in there, what are the different flavors.
You know, and the fun thing is, it's kind of considered rude to like drink or eat while you're walking down the street. So you would get the beverage and then stand by the vending machine and consume the whole thing there, which means you get lots of time to just peruse it and see all the different things they have.
Though a local told us, that's not true.
Yeah, they were like, that's not really true. People do it all the time.
But then we tried.
We wanted to be respectful.
Right, but at one point I did try drinking something while we were walking.
Didn't work.
I swear everybody, it didn't work.
The water just wouldn't come out.
Now I swear that we got looks from everyone, I thought. So at that point I decided we'll stick to the only drink by the vending machine.
I mean, but maybe just because we were tourists, maybe they would have looked at us anyway.
But they weren't looking before.
Maybe you were paying more attention because you were worried that they were looking.
Could be that.
We'll try again next time.
You were also on fire at the time, so them might have been
flame on. So the same is true though if we go to CVS or Walgreens. I always stop at the beverage section and try to see what's new. I noticed, for example, I was shocked actually. Pepsi Mango was on the shelf for a long time, and in my experience, mango flavors usually don't last that long. We saw the same thing with Mango Nos.
Yeah.
We actually requested the manager at CVS. She approached us. She noticed us quizzically looking at the beverage section. And she was like, do you want me to order anything for you? And we put in a special request for Mango Nos. And we checked in every week or two. And eventually she saw me and she said that corporate's not providing it anymore, I guess.
At least she got back to you.
Yeah. So anyway, we thought we would do a little one take spinoff, One Taste, where we'll go out in the world, we'll taste these beverages and report back. We'll test them on screen. You can see our live reactions. Though I do think One Taste is also the name of a sex cult. Which might actually help our numbers, to be honest.
They start sex fires.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we have here, this is the green edition of Red Bull. And I should say, by the way, I do generally think of myself as a healthy person. I don't drink energy drinks all that often. It's a vice for me. It's something I do occasionally. So just don't drink a lot of Red Bull. But a little bit's, I think, okay, right?
Yeah.
Just one little taste.
So this is the green edition. And one thing that actually, before we even taste it, one thing that I don't love with the different flavors of Red Bull is the way that they give you the color of the Red Bull. That's like the name of it. And you have to kind of search to say, well, what is green? Is that apple? Because a lot of energy drinks, when they go green, they're talking about sour apple.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to kind of search for what actually is this. And in this case, it's dragon fruit.
Which to me doesn't make any... Dragon fruit is like red, and then on the inside it's like white with black dots, right?
Right, and then when you pour
Black
it
seeds.
out, the liquid is purple.
Yeah, there's no... the stem is kind of green.
Yeah, so that is the first thing I'd say about this flavor that kind of rubs me the wrong way. And I also, just in general, aesthetically, when a can is a certain color and you pour the liquid out, I like the colors to match. And now this has been sitting next to me for about 2 hours. So it's warmed up to a nice lukewarm temperature.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect way to taste it.
You got to give it a nice little swirl, a sniff.
Although
spill it all over my laptop.
we do already know what it tastes like because we've been drinking it.
You've been drinking it
during this podcast.
Well, that's because the decision to do the inaugural One Taste episode was made after you already started.
And that's why my pupils are all dilated.
Yeah.
Is anyone else anyone else feel hot?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm fine.
So close your eyes, really focus on the flavor.
So I don't know if it's a mental thing. Tastes like grape to me.
Maybe because of how it looks.
Yeah, because it's purple.
It looks like grape.
But if I were to describe it, sweet. It's got
Is it artificial or sweetener or sugar?
Oh no! This is 38 grams of added sugar.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I don't do artificial or. I mean, some sweetener is like stevia. It's not artificial, right?
No, it's just non-sugar sweetener. Yeah.
Yeah. So non-sugar sweeteners just taste off to me. So it definitely tastes like sugar with a hint of grape. And I would say, I would love it if it were a little bit more bubbly, though it may also just start, it might be starting to flatten because it's been out for so long.
Is Red Bull carbonated?
Yeah.
Did it? Oh, don't look at me like that. Come on.
No, I felt like you're a Red Bull connoisseur like me.
Short-term memory, man.
Yeah.
I was drinking, I finished like 10, 15 minutes ago, maybe more.
Alon, did you like it?
Yeah.
Alon actually loves
Did it have
dragon
a good
fruit.
kick? Okay.
What?
Did it have a good
give
kick?
you, was it energizing?
No.
Yeah, I mean, we're all kind of immune to caffeine.
I just had like 1.5 Red Bulls and I still feel pretty tired.
Yeah, I mean that's not a fair. Yeah, so does it energize you? Probably the average consumer, yes. I think at the moment, you're either way too tired and sleep deprived that like it just it
has no effect.
Yeah, it has no effect. Or you just have too much tolerance. The amount of like pre-workout you drink.
Yeah.
Beta alanine. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think on the Gillometer, a 10 out of 10.
Really?
Yeah. Right.
But what? That makes sense.
I just want it to be sweet and a little bubbly. I wish.
So would you get it again, or would you get it
that-
like because you have some preferred Red Bull flavors? Like, Is there ever a situation where you would choose this over your other favorite flavors?
Yeah, it's not the first time I've had this one. So I'll say normally for OneTaste, I would prefer that I taste things for the first time so you can get genuine reaction. This just happened to be what we have here today. I've had it before. I was partially influenced by Alun because you've been on a dragon fruit kick lately, right?
Yeah. You're like actually buying the fruit and eating it?
No. But
because it's like crazy expensive. It looks like a little Nerf ball, and it's like $8 for that little thing.
Don't worry, I'm not buying the fruit.
No, I'm just saying I like the fruit. I like the fruit, and it kind of annoys me how expensive it is.
Yeah, no, I recently found so there's an aisle at our CVS that has all the sparkling water, but I found this hidden other section that has all these.
It's like the old video stores that had like the curtain hanging down.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we'll have raspberry lemonade, lime, lemon, just like your standard flavors. I found this completely separate section that had like guava, dragon fruit lemonade, and I really enjoyed it. So then we went there today, looked at the Red Bull. I saw dragon fruit. Yeah, I guess I'm on a dragon fruit kick. Yeah, not the fruit. Just to clarify,
he's been talking
Too
about
expensive.
it. Like
Maybe we should try the fruit sometime though.
We should. He just will randomly say, I really like dragon fruit. Like that's been coming up lately.
You know what else is good? Star Apple.
Star Apple's
they should
great.
Make a Star Apple Red Bull.
I only learned what a Star Apple is for the first time recently.
Why don't you tell the folks at home what a Star Apple is?
Me? I barely know. I just know what it looks like and that it feels kind of squishy.
It's a fruit with a sort of harder outer shell.
Very sticky.
Yeah, and if you open it up, you eat the inside with a spoon. It's like eating Jell-O almost, right?
I think when we were in Jamaica, I think we just ate, I think the guy maybe cut them and gave us pieces. We didn't have a spoon.
Well, I think it would have been nice to have a spoon. I feel like we kind of scooped
your hands
out.
get all sticky after.
All right, so there you go.
One thing about us, we're all three of us really don't like having stuff on our hands.
I got made fun of a lot.
It's one of the main reasons I don't want to wash dishes.
Yes, when it was wing day in the lunchroom and we got chicken wings, I would eat it with a fork and a knife. I can't stand the feeling. And then eventually you learn you designate one hand. Yeah. You keep one of them clean while you eat the wings.
And you use the other hand to use your phone or you control the remote.
Right, exactly.
Although, have you ever eaten wings just with latex gloves on? Because that's the best.
I have, not as much as you have.
I love doing that.
Though one time, I won't say it was a high point in my life, but at a point in my life, I wanted to eat rotisserie chicken, and I was so annoyed at how messy it would get. So I laid out a bunch of packing paper on the ground.
Like Dexter's Kill Room.
Oh my God.
I also I didn't want to get it on my clothes or anything.
Oh my God.
I'll just ... I'll just leave off there.
Oh my God. Imagine someone walking in on that. There's bones all over the place.
In the bathtub.
Chicken in your mouth.
And I'm in the dark, so you open the light and I was like...
Yeah. I think that's a good note to wrap it up.
So, Dragon Fruit Red Bull. Not sponsored by.
Yet.
Not yet.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, with that, thank you for joining us on One Take. Thank you for joining us on One Taste. I'm Gil.
I'm Alun.
I'm Adam.
See you on the next One Take.